Welcome to God's 5 Minutes with Pastor Ed Wilson. Reach him at gods5minutes@gmail.com. Now, here's Ed Wilson with God's 5 Minutes.
Hello, friends. David wrote the desire of his heart in the 4th verse of the 27th Psalm, which reads, "One thing have I desired of the Lord, that will I seek after, that I may dwell in the house of the Lord all the days of my life, to behold the beauty of the Lord and to inquire in his temple." Solomon built the great temple at Jerusalem, and it was not in existence when David penned those words. Even if it were, never leaving it would not be a proper place from which to carry out the duties of being Israel's chief governor. So what was David really saying? He meant that he wanted to be able to keep up unbroken consciousness of being in God's presence and to be always in touch with him. Well, that seems hard. Perhaps someone would even say impossible. How can I even get my daily work done if I am perpetually thinking of God and his will and consciously having communion with him? But there is such a thing as having an undercurrent of consciousness running all through a person's life and mind, such a thing as having a melody always sounding in our ears, so sweet we don't even realize we're listening to it until it stops. And then, by the poverty of the naked and silent atmosphere, we know how musical were the sounds that we scarcely knew we were hearing, and yet did hear so well, high above all the din of earth's noises. Turning our thoughts in another direction, the temples of worship throughout the world and in the past have typically been considered asylums from pursuit by enemies, sometimes even the law, especially unjust law. In David's and our case, the asylum to be found in God's house covers not only protection from adversaries in the world about us, but amazingly, even from offenses against God himself. Although we are dark and stained with many an evil, many a transgression, even against the Almighty, we are invited by the hospitality of his Son to come into his house, there to claim the hospitality, provisions, protections, and even friendship found only there. For the laws of his temple are that these are the right of anyone who crosses the threshold of his dwelling. It's the same message Paul had to the Ephesians when he told them, "Ye are no more strangers, but fellow citizens with the saints and of the household of God." It is the greatest marvel of the universe that God can and will, through Jesus' sacrifice, receive a guilty soul into his house, wash away the ugly stains, and by a new birth into a fresh, clean life make that same sinner his own child. There is purpose in this verse. It opens by saying one thing. The person who focuses his life on one primary goal is much more likely to reach it than that same person who allows himself to be distracted by, to quote Jesus, the cares of life and the deceitfulness of riches. You can get into God's house. Each of us can. He loves us and he wants us there. But he does encourage us to be focused, to have sensible priorities in our lives, which means putting integrity above selfishness, friendships above money, family closeness higher than petty quarrels and grudges. These traits are the things to be found in God's house. And there is leniency in this verse. David said, "That have I desired, that will I seek after." He didn't say he perfectly found it in every test, always entirely obedient through every trial. He said that's what he wanted and would try to get. What we don't always get on the first try, it's well to desire. Our God is a merciful God. The man who rides a lame horse is not blamed by his master for not being very fast if he has gotten the best performance he could and would do better if it had been possible. God takes the will for the deed with his children. God judges us very much by the desires of our hearts. So let's desire and seek to live in God's house during our lifetimes, for there is another world beyond this. And those who walk with God here have a hope of a forever, a place of eternal dwelling where seeking is done. Have you talked to him today?
You have been listening to God's 5 Minutes with Pastor Ed Wilson. Reach him by email at godsfive minutes@gmail.com. Tune in next time to hear more encouraging thoughts from God's Word on God's 5 Minutes with Pastor Ed Wilson.
What does a person do? Where do they go when they've been hurt or discouraged by the church? Coming up next time.
Church hurt's something that is real. It's something that needs to be talked about, but here's the best part. It's something you can heal from. And with forgiveness, we're going to have to bless them and pray for them and bless them and pray for them. But what happens is eventually those toxic feelings get flushed out of our heart and we begin to live in peace, no longer allowing that resentment to hold us back in what God has for us. So what I want to make sure that people understand is that if God's going to heal you, it's going to be step by step. It's going to be, little by little. Don't get discouraged that you tried one time and it didn't all come back together.
This is Mark Taylor, and on the next Crosspoint, what happens and how do you respond and how do you overcome hurts from the church?
You can hear Crosspoint 4 times a week. Saturday morning at 1, Saturday afternoon at 2, Saturday evening at 9, and Sunday evening at 7. You can also listen anytime online at kneo.org.